Hey, deep divers, welcome back. You probably heard all about how burps are contributing to climate change, right?
Right.
But today we're diving deep into a potential solution.
Okay.
This feed additive called Bovaer.
Interesting.
It's being tested by a UK company, Arla Foods,
Uh-huh.
and they claim it can significantly cut down on methane emissions from cows.
Wow.
We've got a whole stack of sources here with us, news articles about the trials,
Sure.
reactions on social media, all the craziness on there,
I bet.
and statements from Arla and Bovaer's manufacturer, DSM.
Gotcha.
So we're going to sift through the hype and figure out if this Bovaer is the real deal or just clever marketing.
You know, it's funny. There's always this like wave of excitement with any new tech that promises to, help us tackle climate change.
Yeah.
And then right after that wave comes the scrutiny.
Yeah.
So it's definitely important to like look at it from all angles.
For sure. For sure. Okay, so before we get into all the drama, let's break down what Bovaer actually is.
Okay.
So it's a feed additive. Uh-huh.
Something you sprinkle into a cow's regular food.
I see.
And get this. It apparently works by like messing with those methane-producing enzymes in a cow's gut.
Really?
Arla is claiming a 30 to 45% reduction in methane emissions, which is huge if it's actually true.
Wow. That's pretty impressive if they can pull that off.
Right.
What's really interesting is that Bovaer isn't like totally new.
Oh, really?
It's not some untested thing,
I see.
It's been around for a while now. It's been rigorously tested.
Hmm.
And it's actually been approved for use in a surprising number of countries.
Like how many are we talking?
68 to be exact.
68 countries.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea. So if it's been around for a while and approved in that many places, why is there all this controversy?
That's a really good question. I think it boils down to a few things.
Mm-hmm.
I think first there's this natural distrust, of anything that seems like a quick fix for a complex problem,
Right.
like climate change.
Yeah.
And then second, social media has definitely amplified concerns about food safety.
And a lot of times it blows things way out of proportion.
Yes, definitely.
And then finally, there's this tendency, I think, to latch on to conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
especially when you have figures like Bill Gates involved.
Right. The whole Bill Gates thing really threw me for a loop. I remember seeing those headlines about him investing in cow burp tech,
Yeah.
and it sounded really ominous.
I can see how that story got twisted.
Hmm.
The reality is he invested in a totally different company,
Oh, okay.
like a competitor to Bovaer.
Hmm.
But the way the media spun it, this narrative of a billionaire meddling with our food supply, that really captured people's imaginations and
Yeah.
their anxieties.
Definitely understandable. Okay, so that explains some of the initial skepticism, but I've also seen a lot of concern about some of the specific ingredients in Bovaer.
Like what?
People are talking about silicon dioxide and propylene glycol, and honestly, it sounds pretty scary.
So to really understand those concerns, I think we need to take a step back and look at how Bovaer actually works. It all comes down to this compound called 3-nitroxypropanol, or 3-NOP for short.
Oh, wow. Okay, so 3-NOP is like the secret sauce.
Yeah, you could say
But
that.
I've also heard that 3-NOP can be harmful.
So it's true that 3-NOP can be toxic
Okay.
in its concentrated form.
Ah.
And this is the crucial point, the amount of 3-NOP used in Bovaer is tiny.
Okay.
It's diluted to a level that's been deemed safe by regulatory bodies,
Like who?
like the UK's Food Standards Agency,
Okay.
the FSA.
So it's like the difference between like drinking a shot of pure alcohol versus having a light beer.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
They both contain alcohol, but the concentration and the effects are totally different.
It's not just about the presence of a compound.
Yeah.
It's about the dosage and the context.
Right.
And in the case of Bovaer, the FSA has thoroughly reviewed the science,
Uh-huh.
and they concluded that the levels of 3-NOP used in the feed are safe
Okay.
for both cows and humans.
Well, that makes sense, but I'm guessing that hasn't stopped the social media frenzy.
Oh, definitely not. Have you seen some of the reactions?
Oh, yeah. It's wild.
It's intense.
People are talking about boycotts. They're pouring milk down the drain.
Yeah.
And there's all these crazy hashtags going around.
The volume of mentions on platforms like X and TikTok is insane.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Some of the videos have millions of views.
Wow.
It seems like this Bovaer has tapped into this deep well of anxiety about food safety
Yeah.
and corporate power.
And it's not just armchair activists, right?
Right.
I've heard some farmers are refusing to use Bovaer.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it makes sense. A lot of farmers are open to solutions that can make their practices more sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
but others are taking a more cautious approach,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to those unfamiliar compounds like silicon dioxide and propylene glycol.
It's a mixed bag for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's mixed bag. Some farmers are embracing the potential benefits, and others are holding back until they see more evidence.
Exactly. And that's where the tension between scientific evidence and public perception really comes in. You have regulatory bodies and experts vouching for Bovaer's safety.
Yeah.
But then you have this wave of distrust
Yeah.
fueled by social media and misinformation.
Yeah, it's like people are struggling to reconcile this idea of like a quick fix for such a massive problem like climate change.
Yeah.
They're skeptical.
And it's understandable.
Yeah, for sure. And it's important to remember climate change is a complex issue. There's
Right.
no silver bullet.
No.
You know, Bovaer, if it lives up to the hype, could be a valuable tool,
Uh-huh.
but it's not a magic solution.
Right.
So where do we go from here? We've got the science, we've got the skepticism, the social media storm, and all these cautious farmers.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. I think the next step is to delve deeper into the heart of this controversy.
Yeah.
See if we can separate fact from fiction.
Right.
We need to look at the evidence, analyze the arguments, consider the potential consequences of, embracing or rejecting this technology.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, let's dive in. Okay, so we've established there's a lot of noise surrounding Bovaer. But what about the signal? What does the science actually say about its effectiveness?
Well, the research on Bovaer's ability to reduce methane emissions from cows is actually quite compelling. Multiple studies done by independent research institutions have shown significant reductions in methane output
Okay.
when cows are fed Bovaer.
So do these studies tell us anything about how this reduction happens? Like what's actually going on in the cow's stomachs?
So imagine a cow's stomach as like a bustling factory,
Okay.
with all these different enzymes working hard to break down food.
Uh-huh.
And one of these enzymes, called methyl coenzyme M reductase,
Yeah.
is the main culprit behind methane production.
Okay.
And what Bovaer does is it blocks the action of this enzyme.
So it's like throwing a wrench in the methane-making machinery.
Exactly.
So it's not that Bovaer makes the cows fart less, it's
Yeah.
actually changing the chemical processes happening inside them.
Precisely. It's a targeted approach that tackles methane production right at the source.
Mm.
And the really cool thing is this reduction in methane doesn't seem to impact the cow's digestion or their overall health.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're still able to get all the nutrients they need from their food.
That makes sense, but even if Bovaer works as advertised, is it really enough to make a dent in the global methane problem?
That's where things get really interesting. So while Bovaer alone won't solve the climate crisis,
Right.
its potential impact shouldn't be underestimated.
Okay.
Remember, methane is a way more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And livestock farming is a major contributor to global methane emissions.
So even a small reduction in methane from cows could have a big impact on the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's like plugging a leak in a giant water tank. You know,
Okay.
every drop we save counts.
Right.
And when you scale up Bovaer's use across millions of cows worldwide, the potential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions becomes significant.
It almost feels like too good to be true. Is there a catch? Are there any potential downsides to using Bovaer that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, one concern that often comes up
Mm.
is the potential for Bovaer to change the taste or quality of milk or meat.
Mm.
However, studies have shown that this isn't the case.
Really?
Consumers haven't been able to tell any difference in products from cows fed Bovaer.
So the Bovaer's milk would taste the same.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that's super important for public acceptance. People are very particular about their dairy.
Absolutely. Consumer perception plays a huge role in the success of any food-related product.
Right.
And it's not just about taste. There are also concerns about potential long-term effects of Bovaer that are still being studied,
Mm.
even though initial findings suggest it's safe.
What about the cost? Is Bovaer going to be so expensive that it's only an option for big industrial farms?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
The cost of Bovaer right now is higher than traditional feed additives, which could be a barrier,
Okay.
especially for smaller farms that have tighter budgets.
Yeah.
But like with any new technology, the cost will likely come down as production scales up and competition increases.
So it's kind of a waiting game, hoping the price becomes more accessible.
In a way, yes. There's also the question of whether the cost savings from reduced methane emissions will offset the higher price of Bovaer. through things like carbon credits or government incentives.
Okay.
These are all factors that need to be considered as Bovaer becomes more widely available.
So it's like there's this whole economic ecosystem surrounding Bovaer that's still taking shape.
Precisely. And it's not just economics. There are also logistical challenges.
Like what?
Like making sure there's a reliable supply chain for Bovaer
Yeah, huh?
and figuring out how to integrate it into existing farming practices.
It's a lot.
It's a multifaceted puzzle with a lot of moving parts.
So even if the science is sound and the cost becomes manageable, there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome before Bovaer becomes mainstream.
That's the reality with any innovative solution, especially one that aims to change a well-established industry like agriculture.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the most important thing is that we're having these conversations.
Yeah.
We're examining the evidence and weighing the potential benefits and risks.
Right, it's about having an informed and nuanced debate instead of getting caught up in the hype or the fear-mongering.
And it's about recognizing that Bovaer, like any technology, is just a tool. It's up to us as a society to decide how we want to use it and what role it should play in our food system and our efforts to address climate change.
I like that Bovaer as a tool. It puts the responsibility back on us to make informed choices. But speaking of choices, I'm curious about what Arla Foods and DSM, the folks behind Bovaer, are doing to address the public's concerns and build trust in their product. I mean, after all, they're the ones trying to bring this to market.
Both companies have been pretty proactive in their communication, emphasizing the rigorous testing and regulatory approvals that Bovaer has undergone. They've also been working to debunk the misinformation circulating online, particularly those claims about Bill Gates and male infertility.
But is that enough? Words are one thing, but actions often speak louder. Are they doing anything tangible to prove their commitment to transparency and safety?
They've been engaging with farmers, holding informational sessions and workshops to explain the science behind Bovaer and answer any questions or concerns. They're also partnering with universities and research institutions to conduct further studies on the long-term effects of Bovaer on both cows and the environment.
So they're trying to take a multi-pronged approach, addressing misinformation, educating stakeholders, and continuing to invest in research.
Exactly. They're also emphasizing that Bovaer isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. They're encouraging farmers to adopt a holistic approach to sustainability, combining Bovaer with other practices like improving feed quality and managing manure more effectively.
So they're trying to position Bovaer as like part of a bigger, more integrated approach to sustainable farming.
Right.
Which makes sense considering all the skepticism we've talked about.
It makes sense. After all, no single technology can magically solve the complex challenges of climate change and food production. It requires a systems-level approach involving innovation, collaboration, and maybe most importantly, a willingness to adapt and evolve.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here. The science behind Bovaer, the potential benefits and risks, the economic and logistical considerations, and the efforts being made to build trust and promote responsible use. It's been a fascinating deep dive.
I agree completely. But I think there's one crucial element we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, what's that?
The human factor.
Well,
ultimately, the success of any new technology, especially one as disruptive as Bovaer, hinges on public acceptance.
You're right. We can talk about the science and the economics all day. But it's the individual consumer who ultimately decides whether to embrace Bovaer.
And those decisions are often driven by a bunch of different factors, personal values, perceived risks, social pressures, even the emotional appeal of certain narratives.
So it's not just about presenting the facts, it's about understanding how people make decisions.
Right.
Especially when it comes to something as personal as the food we eat.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question. If Bovaer is proven safe and effective, would you, the listener, consume products made with it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What factors would influence your decision?
We've explored the science, dissected the controversy, and examined the bigger picture. Now it's time to turn the lens inward and really think about our own beliefs and values.
Because in the end, it's our choices as consumers that will shape the future of food and farming.
And those choices have the power to drive demand-influence markets and ultimately decide the fate of innovations like Bovaer.
So we want you to take a moment to really consider this question. Weigh the evidence, think about the implications, and make a choice that feels right to you. Because the future of food isn't a set path, It's a story that we're all writing together, and we as consumers have a huge role to play in shaping the ending.
Wow. It's amazing how much there is to talk about with the cow feed additive.
I know, right?
It's a lot more than meets the eye. We've gone from like the science of methane reduction
Hmm.
all the way to the psychology of consumer choice.
It really is fascinating.
And it feels like we've only scratched the surface.
What strikes me is like this tension
Yeah.
between the urgent need to address climate change
Uh-huh.
and our natural human tendency to be cautious,
Right.
especially when it comes to our food.
It's true. It's like we're stuck in this tug of war
Yeah,
between wanting solutions and being afraid of unintended consequences.
exactly.
Like, we want to do what's right for the planet,
Uh-huh.
but we also want to make sure we're not, putting ourselves or future generations at risk.
And that's why it's so important to have like clear, trustworthy information.
Yeah.
Because when there's no reliable evidence, that's when fear and speculation take over.
Right. We saw that happen with the social media reactions to Bovaer. People
Yeah.
are understandably worried about what they're eating.
Yeah.
And when they see all these conflicting reports and crazy headlines, it's easy to jump to the wrong conclusions.
It really highlights the responsibility of scientists and policymakers and even companies like Arla and DSM
Yeah.
to be really upfront
Yeah.
about the potential benefits and risks of these new technologies.
For sure.
They need to build trust, not just with words, but with actions.
Right. It's like that old saying, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
Maybe that's a lesson for all of us to be more careful about the information we believe,
Uh-huh.
to look for different perspectives
Right.
and to have these conversations respectfully,
Yes.
even when we don't agree.
At the end of the day, these challenges we're facing, climate change, food security,
Mm-hmm.
they're so complex,
Yeah.
and we can't solve them alone.
No, we have to work together.
Share knowledge, debate ideas,
Yeah.
find some common ground.
This whole deep dive has really shown me that
That's it.
it's bigger than just Bovaer. It's about how we approach any new innovation
Uh-huh.
and how we deal with the unknown.
And it's about recognizing that every choice we make, from what we eat to how we vote,
That has an impact on the future.
True. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Bovaer, we want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Beyond the science and the controversy and all the economic stuff, what does Bovaer represent to you?
That is a good question.
Is it a sign of hope, a potential solution to a big problem? Or is it something to be worried about? A reminder that technology can have unintended consequences.
It could be both.
Maybe it is. Maybe that's part of the process. Embracing the complexity and the uncertainty.
Because the future isn't a fixed destination, it's a conversation that's always evolving.
I like that.
And we hope you'll continue that conversation. Keep asking questions, challenge assumptions, and share your own thoughts.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's made you curious and giving you the tools to engage with the world in a more thoughtful way. Until next time, keep diving deep.